Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, EDA and HBCUs, Cultivating Strategic Engagement for Regional Economic Development. I'm Brett Schwartz, Associate Director at the NATO Research Foundation, and it's my pleasure to host today's session, which is a joint offering from the U.S. Economic Development Administration and the White House Initiative on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. This presentation is an extension of the 2020 White House National HBCU Week and Conference that was held virtually back in September. Today's goal is to provide the HBCU community with valuable information describing EDA tools, programs, and partners, and how HBCUs can effectively engage with these resources to support the development of inclusive, innovative, and competitive regional economies. We'll be hearing from federal staff at EDA and the Minority Business Development Agency, as well as leadership from HBCUs who will share their experiences and best practices in promoting economic and workforce development, community resilience, business training, and much more. Now, this is the last of 3 webinars which we've held over the past 2 weeks. Today's focus is on the EDA Philadelphia region. Last week we had a session for the EDA Austin region, and yesterday we had a session for the EDA Atlanta region. Now, here at the NATO Research Foundation, we're particularly excited about these webinars. Now, we are the nonprofit research affiliate of NATO, the National Association of Development Organizations, which is a membership association of regional development organizations all across the country. And these include the National Network of Economic Development Districts, or EDDs, which you'll hear much more about on today's call. Now, strengthening the connections between EDDs and HBCUs is an important aspiration, and one that can lead to multiple positive outcomes to support regional economic development. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation to discuss ways to leverage federal resources to support HBCUs and their home communities. We've got a lot to cover, but before we kick things off, just want to share the agenda for today's call and some webinar logistics. So next slide, please. So here you can see our kind of roadmap for today's session. We've got a lot to get through, but I think you'll really find this information really valuable and useful for your efforts. So after this overview, I'll turn things over for the official EDA welcome from Dennis Alvord. Dennis is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Economic Development and the Chief Operating Officer at EDA. Now, after Dennis, we'll have the first of 2 modules, the first one being HBCUs and the EDA ecosystem. And first we'll hear from David Ives, who is the Interim Director of the Performance and National Programs Division, and also the Planning Coordinator, who will discuss the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS, and more about the Network of Economic Development Districts. After Dave, we'll hear from Bernadette Grafton, who is the Program Analyst and University Center Coordinator, who will talk more about the University Center program and some technical assistance and capacity building resources available to you. Following that, we'll hear 2 case studies and 2 examples happening on the ground with HBCUs and their engagement with EDA and their communities. First, we'll hear from Dr. Michael Casson, the Dean of the College of Business at the Delaware State University in Dover, Delaware. And following Dr. Casson, we'll hear from Dr. Siddhartha Sen, who is the Associate Dean at Morgan State University School of Architecture and Planning in Baltimore, Maryland. Following those presentations, we'll turn to our second module, which is assessing relevant federal and capital resources. We'll hear from Doug Lynett from EDA, who is the Director of the Economic Development Integration, to talk about cross-agency resources available to you. And finally, we'll hear from Joanne Hill, who is the Chief of the Office of Business Development at the Minority Business Development Agency. We'll talk about business assistance, access to capital, and some resources, some upcoming resources and programs that are open to you and your students. Following that, we'll have time for questions and answer with the audience. We received some questions in advance, but please feel free to ask your questions of the panelists using the questions box, which is on the right side of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can at the end. And of course, we are recording today's session, and a copy of the recording, as well as a copy of the slides, will be made available at EDA's website shortly at eda.gov. So we've got a lot of slides, a lot of information to get through. Don't feel you have to take notes on everything because, again, the recording will be made available as well as the slides. So with that, let's turn to the next slide. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Dennis Alvord, who will offer an official welcome from EDA and kick off today's presentations. Dennis is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Economic Development and the Chief Operating Officer at EDA. And in these roles, he's responsible for enterprise and program execution. Active in the Department of Commerce, he was elected as co-chair of the Department Management Council, which is comprised of senior executives from all of Commerce's principal operating units. Previously, as senior advisor to the Deputy Secretary, Dennis worked on a broad portfolio of department-wide management, operations, program, and policy issues. So with that, Dennis, thanks so much for being here and putting our session today in context, and look forward to your opening remarks. So take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Brett. It's hard to believe that we're already at number 3 of 3. These have been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed participating, and they've gone by really, really quickly. To the participants that are with us here today, I hope you'll find that we saved the best for last. Good afternoon. It's really great to be with everyone today. I certainly would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking Brett and really all our friends and great partners at the National Association of Development Organizations for hosting and moderating the webinar today. We really appreciate your partnership and willingness to support this programming for this critically important purpose. I'd also like to thank Joanne Hill, who's the Chief of the Minority Business Development Agency's Office of Business Development, for being with us today. Joanne's a great partner, and we look forward to hearing from her shortly. And finally, I'd like to thank all the members of the EDA team that we have on the webinar today. Thanks to Dave, Bernadette, Doug, for your participation. I think folks will find that we've enlisted some of our most knowledgeable program experts, and we'll really enjoy hearing from each of you today. So to all of you who are joining us online, including leaders from historically Black colleges and universities and economic development districts from across EDA's Philadelphia region, we thank you for your participation and interest. The work that you do to create economic opportunity in your communities is critical, and EDA is really proud of our long history working with you to support locally driven economic development strategies. We also have a long history of working with HBCUs through a variety of EDA programs, primarily through our regional office grant making, but really across our entire suite and portfolio of economic development assistance grants. The most visible example of EDA's ongoing partnership with the HBCU community is the 5 schools that have been designated as EDA University Centers. In Philadelphia, those include, in our Philadelphia regional office, I should say, those include Delaware State University and University of Maryland and Morgan State University's Joint Center for Economic Development. Our EDA University Center program makes the resources of universities available to the broader economic development community, helping regional actors to overcome challenges and capitalize on opportunities. As many of you know, EDA works in close partnership with the White House Initiative on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. In September, we were honored to be invited by Jonathan Holyfield to participate in the White House 2020 Virtual HBCU Conference. There, EDA and 4 of our sister DOC bureaus, including MBDA, provided an introduction to the relevant DOC resources that can be accessed and leveraged to support various HBCU missions and priorities. I really like to take a moment to thank Jonathan for his leadership and ongoing partnership. Today's webinar is an in-depth follow-up to that September panel that he helped us to kick off. And today's presentations are designed to provide you with an opportunity to learn more about the EDA regional ecosystem and potential roles for HBCUs. Joanne will, of course, be diving in and providing you with some additional information and background on relevant MBDA resources. So EDA, as the only federal agency whose sole mission is to support local and regional economic development, we really see strategic planning as a necessary first step in building a foundation to support the development of vibrant and diverse regional economies. Therefore, we support regional planning efforts through planning grants that are awarded primarily to our Economic Development District, or EDD, partners. EDDs occupy a central position of importance within EDA's regional economic development ecosystems. They rely on the participation and input of local and regional partners to create and maintain their region's comprehensive economic development strategies, or CEDS. I think you'll be hearing a lot about CEDS today. Participation in the CEDS development process provides these partner organizations the critically important opportunity to ensure that their various priorities and objectives are reflected in the plan and the strategy for the entire region. I'd like to note that EDA's efforts to promote opportunity zones are also an important component of economic development planning, and in particular, we've focused on those areas that present low-hanging fruit or investment-ready locations. And in January 2020, we updated our SEDS content guidelines to help communities across the country to maximize their ability to attract investment into opportunity zones. The inherent regional focus of the SEDS provides a unique platform to capture and promote advantages of opportunity zone communities. So today's webinar is really the first step in what EDA hopes will be a longer process of establishing collaborative partnership between the country's various HBCUs and EDDs. We also look forward to letting you know more about how EDA's economic development integration function can help you plug into a wide range of resources, including federal, state, local, philanthropic, and other resources to achieve better outcomes for communities all across America. By working together, we will advance efforts by HBCUs to join other regional organizations at the table to collaborate and contribute to the SEDS process and to learn more about the many assets available to them to support regional economic development priorities. It's a win-win for all, and I again thank each of you for your participation today and for your focus on improving economic conditions in your communities. Please enjoy the webinar, and please don't hesitate to reach out to EDA if there's anything that we can do to assist you. Thanks very much.
Well, Dennis, thank you so much for that kind welcome and for helping frame our time together today, and of course, for your continued leadership at EDA. It's something we certainly value here at NATO. So thank you so much, Dennis, for that. So now let's turn to our presentations, and we'll start with David Ives from EDA, who will be discussing more about EDDs and the SEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which really serves as that key foundation and roadmap for economic development planning at the regional level. So Dave, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Brett. It's great to be here. And thanks again to NATO for hosting and for all that NATO does on a regular basis to help regions engage in more effective economic development. Good afternoon. Again, my name is David Ives. I'm with the Performance and National Programs Division at EDA headquarters, and I also serve as EDA's planning coordinator. And it's this idea of economic development planning that I want to focus on today, because it's foundational to what we do, and it's where we believe HBCUs can most effectively be integrated into economic development. Next slide, please. I want to start by talking about what economic development is, and it really is about bringing new dollars into and generating wealth in a community or region. At EDA, we believe there is a public sector role in economic development, and particularly a role for EDA, and that role is about helping communities and regions build the capacity for economic development, so that those new dollars can flow into and wealth can be generated in those particular areas. And building capacity means helping better position the community so that the private sector can succeed. In effect, it's about building, improving, or effectively leveraging regional assets so that businesses want to form and grow in those areas. This capacity building can mean different things in communities, from building infrastructure such as road and water and wastewater systems and broadband. And it can also mean things like developing networks and partnerships and different types of collaborations focused on economic development. It really depends on what each individual community needs. So regardless of the type of capacity building, EDA strongly believes that good economic development starts with good economic development planning. And to that end, EDA has established a network of 392 economic development districts, EDDs, as Dennis had mentioned, which are mostly groupings of counties or other areas that have come together to say, hey, we have a common set of assets, a common set of challenges, and by working together, we can more effectively build the capacity for economic development. The primary mission of each EDD is to develop and implement an economic development plan. This comprehensive economic development strategy, or CEDS, is a regional blueprint about how that particular region is going to collectively build the capacity for economic development. It's a collaboration between the public, private, nonprofit, and educational sectors focused on identifying and leveraging regional assets. And it's very much a process as much as an actual document. And we really feel like this is where HBCUs fit in. HBCUs are regional assets that should be part of the economic development planning that's undertaken through the CEDS process. So to that end, we've added new language to the CEDS content guidelines, which encourage EDDs to engage with HBCUs as part of the planning process as a key regional asset. The CEDS content guidelines, for those that may not be familiar with them, are a set of recommended action, examples, and tools that can be used by EDDs and other regional planning entities to develop impactful CEDS. Within the new language focused on HBCUs, we point not only to the strengths that HBCUs bring to the areas in which they operate, for example, from a workforce and talent perspective, but we also point to specific examples of where HBCUs and EDDs have already successfully been working together on economic development. Next slide, please. In addition to the recommendations with the CEDS content guidelines, we also have established, with the help of the Center on Rural Innovation and our friends at NATO, a HBCU EDD overlay map and contact list. And you can see portions of both of those on the screen. The map and contact list are intended to help identify which EDDs have an HBCU operating within their borders and help HBCUs determine within which EDD they're located. Both tools are a quick and easy way for HBCUs and EDDs to connect and begin working together on economic development. And I should point out that 83% of all HBCUs are located within an EDD. So that's a good place to start in terms of developing this type of partnership around economic development. As noted on the slide, both the map and the contact list are located on NATO's CEDS Central site, which has a wealth of information on the CEDS process and economic development planning in general. It's an incredibly great resource. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I recommend everyone check that out as soon as they can. For more information on the CEDS and EDA's role in economic development planning, feel free to also visit EDA's website at eda.gov/CEDS. And as always, a good place to start the discussion with EDA about anything, but in particular, this relationship between HBCUs and EDDs is with EDA's EDRs, Economic Development Representatives, which are our state points of contact. It can be found at eda.gov/contact. I think I'll stop there and turn it back to Brett. Thanks again.
All right, much appreciated, Dave. Thanks so much for that, really laying the foundation for the importance of the districts and the CEDS in that process. So next we have Bernadette Grafton at EDA, who will talk more about EDA's University Center network and capacity building and technical assistance resources. As you can see, Bernadette is on the road somewhere in Michigan. Just shows how dedicated EDA staff is to connect with all of you. So fingers crossed on the signal here, Bernadette, but take it away from here.
Great, thank you so much, Brett. Thank you for having us. I've been with EDA for about 4 years, serving as the University Center Program Coordinator for much of that time. So I'm excited to be here with you today to share with you a little bit more about this program. Next slide. The UC program is a competitively based partnership between EDA and academic institutions that makes the resources and the skill sets that universities have available to the economic development practitioner community. First and foremost, I want to emphasize that this is a technical assistance program, and it is intended to leverage university assets and engage a variety of stakeholders and partners to help build regional capacity for economic development. In our most successful University Center program grantees, we've seen these strong partnerships at play. There's some examples on the screen of many of these partners. We've got workforce development boards, nonprofit organizations, economic development districts. They've been shown to be a key partner for many of our university centers. Next slide. The UC program has been in existence since 1966 and has changed quite a bit since then in terms of the type of awards and the type of funding. It's important to reiterate here that UCs are funded on a competitive basis for a 5-year period of performance, University centers receive funding annually throughout these 5 years based on their prior year performance. Next slide. The last competition was held in FY 2018, and there was about $7.4 million allocated to that program. Generally, each of our regional offices make awards to 8 to 10 university centers for each competition, so this funding does need to be spread out quite a bit. Annual awards generally range from about $80,000 to $200,000 each, depending on the amount of funding and the number of university centers. Next slide. We currently have 64 university centers across the United States, and they can all be viewed on our website. Here's a map showing the distribution. We've recently upgraded our website to have a profile page for each university center, so you can learn more about each of them. Next slide. As was stated earlier, we have 5 university centers that are HBCUs, representing 3 of EDA's regional offices, and you'll be hearing from 2 of them later in this webinar, so we're excited to hear from them about the work that they're doing. Next slide. This next competition coming up is this year. We're working on the Notice of Funding Opportunity right now, and the Chicago Regional Office and the Philadelphia Regional Office will be covered under this NOFA. So I would recommend that if you haven't already and you're interested in the program, that you reach out to your Philadelphia Regional Office points of contact in EDA to learn more about the program and to ask any questions you might have ahead of time. It's a lot easier to have these conversations before the competition is officially open. Next slide. Eligible applicants are listed here on the slide. In general, we're looking at accredited institutions of higher education and community colleges or junior colleges. There is a 50% matching requirement for this program, and in-kind contributions are allowed. And as I stated earlier, if you have any questions about the matching requirements, we highly recommend that you reach out to your regional point of contact in the Philadelphia Regional Office to ask those questions ahead of time. Next slide. The university center activities can generally be bucketed into these 4 categories here. We do have university centers who do a number of things. It doesn't have to be restricted to just one, but these often fall into conducting applied research, providing technical assistance, delivering trainings and workshops, and supporting innovation and business expansion and high-growth entrepreneurship. But we also have university centers that do business counseling and feasibility studies, analyzing data, compiling data as well, and prototyping product development. So the number of activities is very broad, which is one of the best parts of the university center program. Next slide. So I want to provide some specific university center examples just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here in terms of collaboration. So the first bullet here is the University of Wisconsin Extension. They do a lot of data analysis, and they serve as a data hub for economic development organizations, such as economic development districts. This is one of the best examples of university centers working together with economic development districts in the region to make sure that they're meeting the needs and providing the data that is available at the university level. We also have Bowling Green State University and the University of Oregon. Both of these university centers work extensively with their economic development districts on economic resilience strategies and helping them to update their sets. So they're very much aligned and ingrained in each other's meetings to make sure that they're meeting the needs where they're at. Next slide. And lastly, here's just a list of some of the types of program outputs and outcomes that we're seeing from university centers. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just meant to give you an idea of what our university centers are doing. There's a number of things here, but just to draw your attention to a couple of them. We have university centers that are helping to bridge gaps where there are some, helping to create jobs and form new businesses, but also looking at trying to increase economic impact, providing business counseling services, and responding to the needs of communities for disaster recovery and resilience planning. This is something that is really happening right now, especially after the CARES Act, and all of the funding that we've been able to give to some of our current partners like university centers for that purpose. So that's all I really wanted to cover with you today, and I will go ahead and turn it back over to you, Brett.
Yeah, Bernadette, thanks so much. Great stuff. I hope everyone's ears perked up when they heard about the 2021 funding cycle for the EDA Philadelphia region. Fantastic opportunity. So Bernadette, thank you. Everything sounded great. Looks like a beautiful day on the road out there, so safe travels. Excellent. So now we're going to learn more about how those HBCU university centers are really making an impact in their communities through two on-the-ground examples. So first we'll hear from Dr. Michael Casson, the Dean of the College of Business at Delaware State University in Dover, Delaware. We'll hear more about how the university serves as an economic engine for the state, ways it leverages key organizational assets, and some examples of projects and initiatives underway. So Michael, take it away. Thanks so much for joining us as well.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you all for attending this event. I'd like to start out by thanking my regional director, Ms. Linda Cruz, and also my program director, Ms. Chevis Grenham, for their continued support and guidance for our university center. Again, my name is Michael Casson. I serve as the Dean of the College of Business at Delaware State University. I'm also the PI and director of our University Center for Economic Development and International Trade. Now, the acronym for that center is actually, you said it. So if nothing else, at Delaware State University, we believe we have the best named university center. So again, the name of our university center is You Said It. So at this time, I'm going to share with you a little bit, again, as Brett noted, a few things about how we actually started our university center, some of the thoughts and philosophies behind our university center itself, and then also some of the projects that we have on the ground. Next slide, please. So a statement that I often share with my colleagues across campus and also my colleagues in the state of Delaware and our local community is that the prosperity of local and regional economies and the health of their colleges and universities are inextricably linked. That's a very important statement. And the question around that statement is, how strategic is that link? And I think this is where the University Center program really serves to fill that hole in terms of the strategic planning for universities, specifically HBCUs. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little background on Delaware State University, we're a little over 5,000 in our student enrollment population. It spans over 5 different colleges, 42 undergraduate degree programs, 18 masters, and 5 doctoral programs. We're actually located in the state of Delaware's capital, which is Dover, Delaware. The county is Kent County. And we have 2 satellite campuses, one in northern Delaware, or our northern county, which is Newcastle County, and our southern county, which is Sussex County, in Georgetown. So again, the state of Delaware has 3 counties, and our main campus is in Kent County, which is the central county. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna start by just telling you this a quick story just about how, again, the mindset, the thought about establishing a university center happened within the College of Business, myself and my colleagues. For many years, when I started at Delaware State University as an economics professor, I would get opportunities to listen to our state legislators and other community leaders. And one specifically, our U.S. Senator Tom Carper, he would always note at any chance that he had that he wanted Delaware State University to be an economic engine for specifically Kent and Sussex County, but of course for the entire state as well. And this continued to resonate with myself and our colleagues throughout campus. And we really began to think about, how do we put this request, how do we put this notion not only to paper, but in action as well? So how do we best leverage our resources and the skills and talents that we have at Delaware State University for that purpose? Now, ultimately, we were able to secure University Center funding from the EDA in 2011. And with that mission, the mission of leveraging our university or DSU's assets for economic development throughout the state. So one of the key things that we thought about, again, and initially moving forward with this initiative was, what were some of the key industries in Delaware? Because first we had to really understand that what are the top employers? What are the plans moving forward throughout the industry? And so we began to take a more critical look at these areas. And so as you see here on the slide, we have several industries that are our leading industries in Delaware. So professional and business services is, again, one of our leading, financial services, education, healthcare, and then the list goes on. And so, again, this was very important for us to understand, again, what are the leading drivers in Delaware's economy. Next slide, please. So once we got a sense of kind of understanding the leading industries within our state, we have to begin to look at ourselves. I think this is a very important slide as I speak about HBCUs and the building of the capacity to be able to actually leverage those resources and those assets within our respective colleges. So many of us may have experienced or was a part of the strategic planning processes of our respective HBCUs. And I think most of us could probably state that economic development is somewhere in our strategic plan. So when I think about Delaware State University, it is one of the goals. Economic development is clear on our strategic plan. However, I want you to all ask yourself, as we had to ask ourselves at Delaware State University, was that goal that's on our university strategic plan, was it SMART? So what do we mean by SMART? Was it specific? Was it measurable? Was it attainable? Is it relevant? And what is the time based around it? Those are all key areas for us to think about, because again, we don't want the strategic goal to just be a goal that sits and doesn't have any action around it. And so when we asked ourselves, as we look back onto our own respective strategic goals, are they SMART goals? And more importantly, as we heard from our colleagues, are they integrated in the local SEDS or the local economies, and have these goals been vetted with local stakeholders throughout your specific region? All these are key as we think about how to move the university centers, how to leverage the assets of HBCUs. If we talk about infrastructure to leverage and deploy university assets, again, thinking about what infrastructure is currently in place to deploy these assets. A lot of times, and we all understand this, our HBCUs have a plethora of unbelievable assets, extreme talents, but is there a platform for which we can deploy this expertise, in which we can deploy these assets? So you'll see my first bullet says, how do stakeholders plug in? Which is something that we had to work through at Delaware State University, understanding that we have incredible talent on campus, incredible assets on campus. How do our stakeholders plug into these assets or plug into these talents? And this is actually one of the key areas that our university center played. So prior to us obtaining the university center, there wasn't a clear plug-in for our stakeholders. There wasn't a specific office that was accountable for the economic development goals that have been set for the university. So the university center stepped in and filled this void at Delaware State University. The next point here is the university asset map. Many of you, again, as I spoke about the different assets that are on campus, many of us in leadership, we don't necessarily have a full grasp of the assets or the intricacies of each one of those assets. And oftentimes, at least, and again, I'll give you my experience or our experience at Delaware State University so you can begin to take that same lens back to your respective institution. Many times, some of the information that may be on the web or in your specific college or unit within a university, it may not be timely or it may not be current. So taking an opportunity, which is what we did at Delaware State University, to actually create a university-wide asset map that was current and specific to the talents and resources that we have on campus. Thus, we were able to then sit down with the said stakeholders and speak directly to those viable and readily deployable assets at the university, which again is key. Another important piece of kind of advancing the university center on your campus is understanding the role of this type of work for your faculty, their advancement, their promotion and tenure. This is something that we have to work through at Delaware State University again. So In the College of Business specifically, we were actually in a great place because we have what's called AACSB accreditation, which is the highest accreditation you can get for a business school. A little shameless plug, but I'm very proud of that accreditation. So within that accreditation, we found that AACSB had actually evolved as well. And in that evolution, they realized the importance of applied research and community engagement. So with that, we were able to say to our faculty with that transition that the work that you do with local economies, local communities, local industries actually counts towards your promotion and tenure. So again, looking at it through this lens, as you reflect back on your respective university, think about how promotion and tenure can be impacted by this work. Again, as I spoke about how how these assets are ready for deployment is very important. And so having a foundation, having guidelines put in place for your faculty and your staff to really leverage their expertise and get credit for that expertise via that promotion and tenure is very important and something that you really need to consider. Next is the experiential or service learning opportunities and or alignment with your local SEDS. So again, within the university at Delaware State University, led by the University Center, we began to speak to our colleagues across campus about how to align your curriculum to some of the needs of the local economies. So for instance, in the College of Business, we have what's called a Small Business Institute. Within that institute as well, which is serviced by the University Center, by the way, we coordinate local small business needs with, for instance, in this case, our marketing department. So, and our marketing courses, our upper level marketing courses. So we team up students, we call them solution groups. Our solution groups are comprised of a faculty member and several students that basically work with these local businesses to create marketing plans or whatever those needs are. But those are those type of experiential learning, service learning opportunities that ties into the SEDS and again, works for the benefit of both your local stakeholders as well as the university, the faculty, staff, and the students. The next point is the student capacity, since we were just speaking about how this benefits students. When we first obtained the University Center funding from the EDA, of course, we had as part of that proposal that we were going to utilize our students to support the activities within the center. Well, the thing we quickly realized was that many of our students, if not most of our students, had never heard of economic development, let alone a SEDS, or let alone how all these stakeholders work together to really bring forth robust economies. And so at that point, we had to stop and reassess how do we build capacity within our student population. And with that thought, we came up with what you see here as a bulleted point, the Economic Development and Leadership Institute. I often say now, in hindsight, after having had this EDLI Center for the last 3 years now, or 4 years, excuse me, we actually realized that economic development professionals, we're very much concerned with ensuring the workforce population for different sectors throughout the industries. However, I think we inherently neglect our own industry itself. So how do we build a pipeline of future economic development professionals in order to equip them with those skill sets, the talents, and the leadership acumen so that they can go back, many of whom in their respective communities, and really support and design the communities that they have imagined or dreamed of. And so with our Economic Development and Leadership Institute, that has been the charge. And over the course of the last 4 years, we've had 30 plus students come through that program in partnership with the IEDC, which has been an extreme and critical partner in this movement. And so having these students be able to take those training courses, as well as work with, you said it, the University Center on different economic development activities, has just been incredible. It has been an incredible platform for our students to kind of move forward into this economic development profession. And the second stage of this is how do we then move the Economic Development Leadership Institute to our colleagues across not just the Mid-Atlantic region, but potentially across the nation. And I am excited about a partnership that we are currently working on right now with Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. to actually have an EDLI chapter at their university and begin to, again, build that expertise amongst their student population. So again, they can go back into their respective communities and begin to stimulate their local economies. Next slide, please. So all that being said, UCEDIT has had some incredible successes and created some long-lasting partnerships and ties that has kind of reached across different skill sets, different initiative levels. So most recent, we have a small business website initiative via the CARES Act. And this is specifically important because as we know, with the recent COVID crisis, we understand that many of our small businesses were hit even harder because they did not have effective or optimal small business websites. And so specifically, we are aiming to support these small businesses in the state of Delaware by providing them with e-commerce platform capability within their respective websites so that they can, again, continue to grow throughout this pandemic and continue to secure a customer base via this online platform. As you see here as well, we've done, again, this is a variety of projects. For the city of Dover, we conducted an African-American small business and workforce inclusion study. So again, this was for the city of Dover, the Economic Development Office, and they were interested in getting really a sense of what type of resources, what type of assets are needed in order to propel our African-American small businesses in the city of Dover, as well as build a robust workforce among our African-American population. So that was conducted, as well as for the city of Wilmington, which is in Newcastle County. We worked with them to develop a workforce development strategic plan that was aimed at the citizens of Wilmington. So essentially, while they have many opportunities within the city for job placement, many of the local citizens of Wilmington were not obtaining those positions. And so the city of Wilmington saw it fit, and we understood to figure out what type of capacity, what type of skill sets were required in order to make the citizens of Wilmington more competitive for these opportunities. The last bullet on there is, as I spoke about asset maps for the university itself, we were able to conduct an asset map for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Again, a project that cut across assets in financial sector, the infrastructure, quality of life, again, really giving them a baseline to not only understand the depth of their assets and how they can best be deployed, but also understand those gaps that exist within their local economies. So as they develop their SEDS and look at their assets, they can see where they may need some additional resources in order to meet their final objectives and goals. Next slide, please. So the first bullet actually on this slide kind of speaks to how, as a university center, and the projects and initiatives that you conduct and the partnerships that you create actually lead to broader opportunities. And so we were actually pulled in on what was called Analytical Support Services for the Evaluation of Sustainable Systems, ASSESS. And this was actually to support 22 Western African countries in the areas, or our specific area that we honed in on was the trade area. So we worked across the board via USAID to actually provide insight into trade policy and trade development in these countries in Western Africa. So again, having worked with stakeholders across the state, having demonstrated an ability to both leverage and deploy the assets within Delaware State University, we were provided this opportunity to work on this project that was a 5-year project and yielded incredible output. We have another one here that I'd like to speak about, the small business loan portfolio analysis in the opportunity zone in the city of Wilmington. Again, another partnership opportunity based on our previous work. We were able to conduct an analysis of a small business portfolio of a local CDFI in the city of Wilmington, and really kind of speak to or provide them insight into not only the outputs, but how to better develop a program moving forward. Next slide, please. I believe that is my last, that's the last slide, I'm sorry. So thank you all, and I look forward to questions at the end.
Excellent, Michael. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. I think it's very clear the intentional and thoughtful approach that you have taken to this, and it's great to hear about SMART goals and these projects underway. So I'm sure we'll have time at the end for some questions as well. But also probably one of the best acronyms, like you said, I've heard in this business. So it's exciting to hear what you said. So thanks again for that. So now we're going to turn to Dr. Siddhartha Sen, who is the Associate Dean at Morgan State University School of Architecture and Planning in Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Sen will discuss how ASCEDS was developed for Northeast Baltimore, as well as share some information about community redevelopment, entrepreneurship, and economic recovery projects the university is supporting throughout the city. So Siddhartha, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to talk a little bit about our school and our university before we get under the projects that we have done, because I think this is important to understand where we are coming from and what we are doing. So Morgan State University is an institution that has 8,000 students. It has 10 schools, and then it also is a tier. It's a research 2 institution, so research is an important thing. And one of the things that all HBCUs have done, if we look at historically at HBCUs, like community service has been very important. So doing this type of work for EDA actually fits into the mission of the university and so on and so forth. What I wanted to talk about is also a little bit about our school, and not about all schools. I said we have 10 schools. I'm in the School of Architecture and Planning, and that's a unique school at an HBCU, because it's the only school of design that has 3 accredited programs in the field, namely architecture, landscape architecture, and city and regional planning. These are all master's programs. And we have an undergraduate program in architecture and environmental design, which is a pre-professional program, and that feeds into our graduate programs as well as students go to other universities. We have also got a bachelor's program in construction management, and we recently started a master's in construction management, as well as an undergraduate program in interior design. One of the key things for the school is like community service, and we do it through design projects, we do it through planning projects, we do it through construction management, everywhere. And it's a part of the tenure process. I mean, like, as well as at the university as well as at the school level. So this was a natural fit for us. I have to say that I was a little bit skeptical, and when we started with the project, when College Park approached me to do it, because we are in the school. I mean, they're also in the School of Design. That's why I felt comfortable, because usually these sort of projects are housed within business schools or in the economics department and so on and so forth. So that was my skepticism. But then I realized that we could do different things, and you will see from my presentations that we have done different things. And of course, I want to thank the people from the Philadelphia office, namely Travis Cranham and Alma Plummer, for the encouragement that have got during the entire time that we have this center. And of course, my colleagues at College Park, they have never made me feel like, although we decided from the beginning, given our resources, that they were going to be the major partner and we were going to be a minor partner, and they have never made me feel like that. So I mean, this has been an equal partnership, and that's a lesson to be learned also, the collaboration. So one of the first things we did was a comprehensive economic development strategy plan for the Morgan Community Mine. I need to speak a little bit about the Morgan Community Mine. I don't know if you have heard of our president, David Wilson. He is very much into economic development, especially he is into economic development around the campus. So he conceived of this Morgan Mine, which is a roughly 1 mile radius from the center of Morgan, and he wants to say economic development in these communities. So we thought that this was a good opportunity to do so, and because I was also involved in the process of doing the strategic plan. I was in the task force, as I was also in conceiving the Morgan Community Mine. So we saw this as an opportunity, and usually this is not done at this scale. This was like, as you all know, that this is done at the city level. So it was difficult to do this. But what we did is we tried to reach out to the community surrounding Morgan, and we held multiple meetings. So this was like, there was a significant amount of community input in developing this plan. What it did for us is like not all these communities surrounding Morgan are predominantly African American. There are some white communities, and there is usually a schism. There was historically, there has been a schism between these communities and us, because they never, like way back when Morgan started in this area, when we moved our school over here, none of the white communities liked the fact that there was a black school in the middle of the community. So this helped dispense that fear, that skepticism. Now it's not that existent anymore, not to the extent when it was when we started or in the 60s, but again, that skepticism was there. So we sort of what you call dispense that. So that was a good thing. So, and that what that has done is like it has developed a good relationship with all these communities, and made what you call, whenever we want to do a student project like a service learning project, I can easily approach the community leaders and so on and so forth, and they're happy to what you call have us work. And we keep on getting numerous requests as to do small plans and things of that sort. It also has generated internships for our students, for especially for the planning program, where communities are involved with economic development and so forth. So it was an interesting exercise. And finally, I mean, like, as all HBCUs are really what you call constrained with resources, this gave us an opportunity to hire several graduate students who worked on this project for the entire time we have had. So we are able to, I mean, like, able to support graduate students and increase our enrollment, which is also important for schools like us. Can we move on to the next slide? The next slide. Okay, so this is interesting. This is like when I'm not presenting every single project that we did, but some. Like what happened is, like, we have been working with Mount Royal Economic Development it's the center for some time. This was a non-profit organization corporation, sorry, Mount Royal Development Corporation, which was formed for communities in West Baltimore. As you know, that's a very distressed area and this is where the riots took place and things of that sort. So in order to what you call, they came up with this concept of a smart village, where smart technology could improve the village and so on and so forth. So we started working with them on this issue and see what we could do in terms of providing technical assistance. There was another report we did where we came up with strategies as to what small businesses could do. But then suddenly that corporation was dissolved, and then we started with there was a non-profit developer who is very much into West Baltimore, and he still, what you call, wanted to carry on the work that was started by Mount Royal Development Corporation, which had other institutions such as Hopkins and UB and so on and so forth. So, but he wanted to do it on his own. So we sort of started working with it, and one of the things we did, this is sort of a design come economic development project, which is an interesting takeaway for every one of us. Like, economic development could be urban design too. Like, we have this studio, this huge studio. This is the only motion picture studios in the city, which was once a good industry, but it was closed, and now it's part of Morgan's School of Community Health. So, but the studios are lying there, and there was a big opportunity to see what could be done with the studios to refurbish them, and this would indirectly benefit the population in West Baltimore and whole of Baltimore, because it could generate jobs and what you call provide creative people with a different opportunity. So we did this for the last couple of years, and we also designed, I mean, Morgan is thinking, we right now have an animation and technology program, but we eventually want to have a film school, which will be few of the film schools at an HBCU. So we designed this whole thing, and we presented it to the president of the university, and it may be like he might take this to, so this some real benefit will come out of it, because he might take it to what you call the state as well as what you call development partners, and this might happen. I mean, it's all been stalled because of this COVID situation, but this was an interesting exercise where we envisioned the studio, what could be done, and also design the place using the maximum space we could, and looking at various schools which have such what you call places. And this would be, if this is ever implemented, this will be the with unique, because it will the only one of a kind at an HBCU. Again, the benefits of this was like we were able to what you call raise like the profile of the school with the communities, because they also thought that what is this, like the half of the places that what you call dilapidated, and then we have one part of it is community, what you call School of Community Health. So that brought a positive attitude towards the community surrounding the area. And the very fact, again, the same thing, the very fact we brought them in, that was what you call useful, and the usual things that provided students an opportunity to work with a real life problem and get assistantships. Okay, so moving on to the next project. Can we go to the next slide, please? Again, this is what we are doing right now. This is also, they were working with Robinson Group to develop strategies that will help residents and businesses to, again, West Baltimore, through innovation, entrepreneurship, applications of new technologies and so forth, so that they can, because, and as you see, many of the small, it's interesting that when we did a survey, many of the small, West Baltimore is of course predominantly African American, but if we do a survey of small businesses, like what you see is like many of them don't even have the capacity to actually deal with technology. And we found this to be a very difficult thing from them, because during this COVID, they all went out of business. Unless they had this technology, they couldn't survive. So hopefully with what we are doing, we will be able to stimulate some of that and help these businesses. We are right now at the present, this project is not complete as yet. We identified the area, as you can see, and they were working with small businesses in the area to figure out how we can help them in terms of what you call developing resources where they could go to. We ourselves don't have the capacity to provide this training, but what we are doing is trying to identify resources and what you call funding availability and so on and so forth, as to how they can go about what you call developing their technological savvy, so that they can survive in the post-COVID world. Okay, next one. Okay, again, this is like we also were lucky enough to get the supplemental plant. What we are going to do with this thing, we just what you call collected. It is like what we're going to do. We haven't started it. What we're going to do is to what you call work with local businesses to find out with how they had access to PPE, and how that has affected their functioning during this whole process, what they can do to address the problems that are. So it's a spin-off of the previous research. So what we are doing is like trying to figure out how did they cope with the COVID situation, and how what they can do to mitigate the losses that they had during the COVID period. Also, it's interesting to note our initial study showed that many of these small businesses, which are of course minority owned, don't have access to PPEs, which is a big problem. So again, we might we have a meeting tomorrow with College Park to figure out whether we can combine this together and do a bigger project, and see if we can perhaps provide. We ourselves can't provide PPEs, but see where they can garner resources to get the PPEs and so on and so forth. Overall, this has been a very good learning experience, both for the faculty as well as for the students in the entire school. And we were really grateful to EDA to give us this opportunity. It also, and another thing that I wanted to point out, I touched upon it, like we were approached. I didn't think of it, but when I saw the call for proposals, but I said like maybe this is too much for us to handle. But when College Park approached us, I was initially hesitant, but I know people there, so eventually we collaborated. And this is an example of collaborations. I mean, it can serve as two examples. One is like if two schools collaborate, I think you can have a bigger impact. And this is also a good example of an HBCU collaborating with the predominantly white institution to get good results. We sort of, where there is a connection, of course, there's a connecting thread between what we do, but we sort of work independently. College Park works in the DC region and we work in the Baltimore region. So we are effectively serving two areas with the work that we are doing. Basically, that's what I have to present. And I will keep some time for additional questions during the Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, Siddhartha, thank you so much for that
You're
excellent
welcome.
presentation. Yeah,
You're
and
welcome.
as a former resident of Baltimore myself, and it's a city I love very much, really inspiring to hear these projects and really meeting the needs for recovery and also general economic development. So thanks for that. So now we're going to pivot to our second module, which is on federal and capital resources. And I'm going to put the nudge on Doug and Joanne a little bit. We're running slightly behind schedule here to move through these presentations, but I'm really excited. You'll get a chance to hear next from Doug Lynett, who from EDA will discuss the economic development integration resources at the federal level and some cross-agency support. So Doug, thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Brett. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to join you this afternoon. I'm going to spend just a few minutes discussing the economic development integration practice at EDA and describe some of the ways in which our team can work with HBCUs across the country and help strengthen connections between your schools, EDDs, and other local and regional stakeholders for economic development. Next slide, please. The economic development integration, or EDI, practice at EDA is almost 5 years old. And as I was basically describing, one of the key functions that we serve is to enhance and extend EDA's ability to support local and regional economic development. And there are three primary objectives that our team has established to kind of frame our work, both what we do and how we do it. The first of these is increased access. And what this means is we work as a team to ensure that local and regional applicants can easily identify and apply for the federal economic development resources that can best support their local priorities and objectives. So what we do in essence is try to crowdsource interagency federal expertise to help communities implement effective, innovative solutions to locally identified economic needs. We've developed certain tools and playbooks to help EDA and other federal program personnel to rapidly identify the economic development partners and resources, both federal and non-federal, that are the most relevant and the best fit to support local and regional economic development priorities. The second objective, one that I think is personified through today's webinar, is enhanced collaboration. We work to establish and maintain collaborative relationships with colleagues and partners across the federal government. We are working with them to streamline processes and identify, leverage, and invest our various economic development resources into a number of projects, enabling applicants to maximize the federal investments at the same time, minimizing the total time and effort that it takes to identify and apply for those. We facilitate coordination among multiple partners and stakeholders to promote multiple strategic investments in support of local priorities that can contribute to sustainable economic growth, especially for advanced communities. And finally, the third objective is to reduce administrative burdens. We work with our federal interagency partners to identify opportunities and develop guidance to help applicants navigate and possibly consolidate different administrative requirements that are triggered by each individual award of federal assistance. So with about 5 years of experience under our belt, there is a lot that I could tell you about economic development integration and the work we're doing, but for today's purposes, I want to focus on a pair of related methods that we have developed and are facilitating in states and regions across the country. Next slide, please. I certainly appreciate what Dr. Casson had to say about the You Said It initiative up at Delaware State University. Like Dr. Casson, I really prefer acronyms that are kind of pronounceable words. In this case, the pronounceable word is FIRE, which is short for Federal Interagency Resource Exchange. This particular type of event is one that our team is promoting and facilitating to a particular type of community or region. The specific factors to describe these places include that there is a general lack of economic development capacity in that place and a related lack of knowledge about how to identify, access, and invest relevant economic development resources. So as such, FIRE events are targeted to those places that have not yet initiated or established a strategic plan, such as the SEDS that Dave Ives described earlier. They have not reached consensus or identified the economic development priorities for their region, and for that matter, they do not have a pipeline of projects that they are ready to initiate and implement. In short, these communities and regions have not yet identified either where they want to go or how they plan to get there. Again, these are primarily for regional and local partners that are currently in the early stages of economic development planning and strategizing. They're still kind of coming up with the plan, their priorities, and they're looking to start collaborating to identify appropriate solutions and paths forward. Next slide, please. And let's go to the next slide as well. The second type of integration event or process that I'd like to describe today is something called REDS, which stands for a Regional Economic Diversification Summit. So whereas the FIRE is intended to facilitate information sharing and relationship building, the REDS process is specifically and intentionally designed to catalyze project implementation. A successful problem-solving REDS engagement will benefit from EDA guidance before, during, and after the initial summit. Regional integrators, in particular, will play a pivotal role during the post-summit period, working in partnership with summit hosts and sponsors and other stakeholders to sustain interagency collaboration on project implementation tasks and to capture related outcome data. The common objectives for each REDS includes enhanced collaboration. This is kind of a living example of how the EDI team works to facilitate engagement between intergovernmental and cross-sector partners and stakeholders and other potential funders in a focused, action-oriented dialogue about the resources necessary to implement priority projects. Reduced administrative burdens and obstacles. REDS are a great forum through which to identify and either mitigate or remove obstacles and expand access to economic diversification and community development resources. Optimal resource alignments. In other words, again, as a forum, as an event and a process, REDS really enables multiple stakeholders to think very carefully and strategically about how the different sources of funding can be most effectively stacked together to optimize total outcomes generated by the projects that are implemented. And then finally, project action plans and outcome metrics. the thing that we fear the most in supporting summit process is that the summit as a singular event will generate lots of excitement and energy, but that will fizzle out afterwards. So we want and desire for the summits to provide a space to create action plans and begin the process of establishing metrics to measure the results and outcomes with respect to project implementation. I do want to mention that while the country is in pandemic and we're all in quarantine, these two types of events can still be facilitated in a virtual setting, much like today's webinar. So for anybody in today's audience who is interested with more information about a fire or a REDS, please know that this is something that EDA can continue to facilitate while we're in quarantine. Next slide, please. Final slide. Let's go to the next one, please. So this slide reflects a little bit of information from one of the very first summits that was held. It was in July of 2018 in the city of Philadelphia. The host and convening entity was the Enterprise Center, which is a minority business and entrepreneurial support organization. A fun trivial fact that you may be aware of if you are in the Philadelphia region is that the headquarters is in the same building where American Bandstand used to be broadcast. So you can see the lists of federal participants who attended. It was very robust representation across many of EDA's federal partners. 2 institutions of higher education from the city were also there, including Drexel University and Temple University. The Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission also participated. And as an event, this was a great example of the reach that EDA and its partners can have in terms of convening stakeholders from various sectors, various levels of government for specific action steps to help move community and regional economies forward. There's more information available at the very end of the slide deck for today's webinar. You can find on EDA's website for the integration practice and the REDS process. But for now, I'd just like to conclude by saying thank you again for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon and look forward to the Q&A aspect of the webinar. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Doug. Much appreciated, and thanks for all you and your team do to help folks kind of navigate the federal family and all those resources available, and hope people take advantage of the fire and the REDS opportunities, even during this socially distant time. So with that, we're going to turn to our final speaker today, and I'm glad you stuck around because Joanne Hill has a lot of really exciting updates to share. Joanne's at the Minority Business Development Agency. She'll discuss some upcoming initiatives, competitions, and a really exciting workforce development partnership with Amazon. So with that, Joanne, looking forward to hearing your remarks.
Thanks so much, Brett, and thank you all for sticking with us today. I must start by sharing that I am a proud graduate of an HBCU, Benedict College, Columbia, South Carolina, where I was born and raised. And thank you to EDA, our sister agency, for inviting MBDA to be a part of today's session. Next slide, please. MBDA serves more than 11 million minority-owned businesses that employ more than 8 million folk across America, and these firms generate more than $1.8 trillion in revenue annually. These firms expand the U.S. economy, strengthen local economies, as well as support job creation. Next slide, please. Our vision. Our vision is economic prosperity for all American entrepreneurs and enterprises. Our mission is that we are the only federal agency that is specifically designed to foster growth and competitiveness and global competitiveness of minority business enterprises. Our passion is centered on core business advisement to minority business enterprises through business transformation. Next slide, please. Our impact is centered on 3 pillars: access to capital, access to contracts, and access to market opportunities. In the area of access to capital, we generated more than $1.6 billion in awarded transactions for minority business enterprises, and that financing was provided through traditional as well as alternative sources of capital. Under access to contracts, that includes both public and private sector contracting, we generated more than $3.1 billion in contracts. And I just received our FY20 performance numbers, and we have nearly doubled our performance in contracts and capital from just over $4 billion to right at $8 billion. In the area of markets, and that specifically is dealing with exports and global markets, our firms generated more than $300 million in export activity, and that is pretty remarkable. Next slide, please. Under the CARES Act of FY 2020, Congress mandated that MBDA be authorized $10 million in supplemental funding for education, training, and advisement to small and minority business enterprises that have been impacted by the COVID crisis. We granted this $10 million and disseminated it to 30 strategic partners. 25 of those are what I call MBDA franchise model business centers that I'll talk about a little bit later, and 5 of them were for national minority chambers of commerce. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of our investment. To the left, you'll see our business centers. You will see where we currently have a footprint, starting with Arizona and ending in Washington, as in Tacoma, Washington. Our next equity includes our advanced manufacturing centers. You will see we have one in this region in Maryland. We also have one in Georgia, Michigan, and Texas. We also have 4 national export centers that are located in California, Florida, Illinois, and Texas, as well as a federal procurement center to help our firms that are looking to do business with the federal government. Our projects include our American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian demographics. As you will notice, we have 9 of those investments, starting with Alaska and ending in Washington. We are very proud of that program. We also have an office within the MBDA specifically dedicated to Native American business development. Under our newest initiatives, and I'm very proud to say that Morgan State University is one of our grant recipients, is the Entrepreneurship Education for Formerly Incarcerated Persons. We have 4 investments under that program, located in Alabama, California, Morgan State there in Maryland, and South Carolina. You should know that this has been one of our most highly sought after grant competitions that we've ever put out in the history of the agency in my 20 years of being with MBDA. Our next investment is the Intercity Innovation Hub. We have 2 of those. We have 4 enterprising women of color business centers, DC, Georgia, Hawaii, Louisiana. And finally, our Minority Growth and Equity Fund initiative, also known as the $1 Billion Fund, where we are striving to raise $1 billion in growth equity to help support the growth of minority business enterprises. Next slide, please. I will share with you that we have new grant competitions that are in planning at this time that are going to be coming out. I would encourage you, I know that we have an investment now with Morgan State. That's the only HBCU that we have funding with at this time, and it's a grant recipient. We need more. We'd love to see more of you, Delaware State, Kent, apply for MBDA grant competitions that are going to be coming out in the near future. You can learn more about those by visiting our website at mbda.gov. You will also, if you've got notifications that come to you about grants that are being let, there will be an announcement via the Federal Register notice. Next slide, please. So the $1 Billion Fund, I've shared with you a little bit about that. At a high level, the key goals of this fund are to quantify the demand for and current supply of capital focused on minority and women business enterprises. We will leverage the extensive experience and expertise and broad network that the National Association of Investment Companies brings to us. The NAIC, the acronym for National Association of Investment Companies, is the preeminent minority trade association for private equity firms that are minority owned. They are the entity that we have as a partner that's helping to build out this billion-dollar fund through 4 significant funds of funds that are affiliates. And lastly, to drive sustainable job and wealth creation and to make significant economic impact in historically underserved communities across America. Next slide, please. Our Enterprising Women of Color initiative was really established to create pathways to economic empowerment for women business owners, notably to support the growth of their networks, expand their client base, and connect them to entrepreneurial ecosystems. To date, we've had more than 10,000 attendees participate in these events that we have across the United States. Our most recent one was held with, that was targeted during Asian Indian Heritage Month, and that was specifically targeted on women business owners within that community. It was very successful. If you want to learn more about those initiatives and events, again, please visit our website that is chock full of information on it and upcoming events. Next slide, please. One of our most exciting collaborations and partnerships that we forged is with the Amazon Corporation, and I have been the central point of contact and driver of this partnership. We're very excited about our Building a Student to Workforce pipeline that was launched officially before the HBCU family at this year's White House Initiative on HBCUs. If you visited the exhibit booth, Amazon Web Services was at our booth, MBDA's booth, promoting the AWS How to Be Building a Student to Workforce pipeline. Next slide, please. And you can skip to the next one. Thank you. So, growing demand for cloud skills. According to LinkedIn data, cloud computing was the #1 hard skill that companies needed most in 2009. A survey of 450 research showed that 90% of IT decision makers report cloud skill shortages. This is an incredible opportunity for HBCUs and others that are seeking to have individuals acquire this certification that they will gain as a part of this platform that Amazon is offering free of charge to HBCUs. Next slide, please. The AWS Academy is a curriculum developed and maintained by AWS. It's a post-secondary program integration. The courses are aligned with the AWS certification, and students complete this program employment ready. Next slide, please. The curriculum is rigorous, and again, students will take courses that give them the opportunity to develop a range of skills and expertise, including foundational cloud concepts, architecting, developing, operations, and data analytics. Next slide, please. Here, you get a snapshot of some of the institutions that have signed on, that are now signed up and offering this to their students. I'd like to see some more HBCU logos added to this slide. I know that we have some that have signed up, and are in motion since the White House Initiative on HBCUs conference. But we'd love to have you and hope that you are either signed up or will sign up following today's session. You will see we have everything from community colleges to internet schools of international studies, including the London School of Economics and Political Science, Sao Paulo, over in Brazil. We have New Zealand, Clemson University, Singapore, and Miami-Dade College. Next slide, please. How do you get involved? Here's the contact information for my liaison that I work very closely with. I speak with Angel at least bi-weekly. She is the manager for global growth and equity initiatives for Amazon Web Services. And if you reach out to her, please don't hesitate to let her know that you heard about it or more about it if you've heard about it already. And I'm giving you the extra nudge to go ahead and sign up. Feel free to use my name. Next slide, please. So I shared a little bit about the MBDA partnership with Amazon and Amazon Web Services. Another one that I'll tell you about just generally is we launched a minority business and technology initiative to promote e-commerce as a sustainable business strategy for minority-owned firms. We know how important and vitally critical that is right now with this COVID crisis and the impact that it has had on business in general. This partnership we launched back in April with a virtual roadshow that had nearly 3,000 participants sign up and be a part of this Amazon, how to become a seller on the Amazon Business Marketplace. That's teaching these MBEs how to sell their products on the Amazon Business Marketplace. It's been a huge success. We continue to have other shows across the nation that are held by our Business Center Network and other corporate partners and trade associations that have taken an interest. But the short of it is this platform enables MBEs to increase their online presence by leveraging the Amazon business as a solution to reach more buyers and sellers globally through e-commerce. The access to success coaches for products listed on Amazon Business is also one of the benefits, as well as connecting these minority businesses and buyers to B2B marketplace. Next slide, please. Our plan as an agency, winning the future now. MBDA initiatives are focusing MBEs on growth today while preparing them to meet industry needs of tomorrow. So as your entrepreneurial programs, I heard Delaware State as well as Morgan State talk about their entrepreneurial programs and enterprise initiatives. Here at MBDA, we are helping these firms through digital, global, and think tank objectives and solutions. Notably, I also want to mention, I talked about our export centers and how we're helping MBEs in that regard. You heard the professor earlier talk about their international trade program with the university. We also have, I'm very proud to announce, our Office of Policy Analysis and Development at MBDA. If you've not had a chance to take a look at some of the data that we have through our research studies, we have 3 that we produced over this past fiscal year. We have several more that are on the horizon that will be published in this new fiscal year, FY21. And of course, we have a little traction and of course conversation going on around the impact that COVID has had on MBEs to support programmatic initiatives and investments as we move into the future. Next slide, please. With that, I want to thank you. If there are questions that you have for me following my presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is jhill@mbda.gov. If I don't have the answer, I will find it for you. Thank you so very much and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
All right, Joanne. Well, thank you so much for that presentation and sharing those resources. I hope folks are able to really take advantage of those, take a closer look at that free Amazon training as well. Tremendous opportunity. And of course, congratulations on 20 years at MBDA. Really, really exciting. So yeah, as you can, So as you can see up on the screen here, here's some additional information with some of the topics and programs that we discussed today. Again, the recording of this presentation as well as the slides will be made available shortly at EDA's website as well. So with that, I know we're at the hour-and-a-half mark, but I'm hoping that our speakers and all of you can maybe stay on for about 10 more minutes, as we did have some questions that did come through. So if the rest of the panel could turn on their webcams again, and again, hope some of you can stick around as well. for some of these questions that we've received. And I just want to have a kind of a broad one first for Michael and Siddhartha as well. You know, both of your universities and colleges have done a tremendous job at kind of fostering relationships with EDA and the federal government around economic development initiatives. And just want to hear kind of your thoughts and best practices and tips for maybe some of those institutions that may not have those partnerships in place. You know, kind of what are some of the first steps, and how have you been able to kind of build that trust and then those relationships with federal partners to really support these powerful initiatives? So Michael, I don't know if you'd like to go first.
Yes, thank you, Brett. I would start out by saying, you know, the asset map for us was very important. You know, it kind of, as stakeholders on campus or as employees on campus, faculty and staff, we didn't even understand or realize the amount of great work that is happening on our own campus. And so to get a full perspective of all those assets and all the expertise was, one, very important. And then secondly, as we engaged our stakeholders and our partners, we were then fluent in the capabilities of the university. And we understood, you know, and we had the platforms put in place as a result of the understanding of those assets put in place in order to effectively deploy those assets. Again, it's one thing to have the assets and the expertise. It's another thing to have a platform for deploying those assets. And so for us, being able to go out armed with that expertise readily available and be able to speak to our partners as to how we can, you know, support their efforts or plug some of the holes they may potentially have was what was very effective for us. Again, that point of contact, that ability to plug in.
Okay, so in our case, I'm going to first talk about what happened in our case, and then maybe try to generalize as to what other HBCUs could do. We were very lucky to have Dr. Wilson, David Wilson, as the president, because he's really into, despite all his emphasis on research and ambitions to go to R1, he does value community service quite a bit. And because he was involved with it when he was in Auburn, so he knows what this is all about. So him having this Morgan Community Mile in his strategic plan helped us a lot, because that gave us a lot of leverage. Like we could say to the rest of the university, okay, this is our president's what you call agenda mandate, so why don't we all what you call follow it? And another thing that happened with us is, like I said very briefly in my presentation, our school, the School of Architecture and Planning, has a long history of community involvement. So it was easy to fit the whole thing into it. For schools that don't have EDA grants and things of that sort, I mean, like one of the things that is very common to all HBCUs is this community service. Like this is part of our mission. Every single HBCU has that. If someone was to take that and sort of bring that to the faculty, that would be useful, although sometimes difficult. If it could really be helpful, I've tried that and I'm not completely succeeded to build that into the promotion and tenure package, that you should be rewarded because of that. We have not completely succeeded, but there's some importance that has been given to it. And the trust, building the trust is also, as you said, like what is it? Like I did what you call, you know, I reached out to these communities very humbly. Like, look, we are here, we have these resources. I mean, we want to partner. So I send out what you call, so you have to be proactive. Like, I don't want to get into the detail. You have to be proactive about it and reach out to the communities and say, like, dispense that fear that, okay, we are not the ivory tower. We are an HBCU, which gives hands-on training and things of that sort. So we want to work with you. Come, our doors are open, and have some gestures, like, you know, invite them into your building. Like, you know, we have this nice new buildings that we got. Again, this is because of what we didn't get before. So if you invite them into the building, show them the building, tell them what you're doing, that can build trust. That the very fact they're coming into these communities. And it's like, it has always been like, one thing that I've observed is with the communities of color, they have always been trustful of HBCUs, so that isn't an issue. The distrust lies with what you call white communities, which lie around the university. So that's where you got to what you call intervene and tell them like, no, like that's a thing of the past. Whatever we had, we gotta have a gesture and things like that. And I really want to thank what you call Dr. Wilson for this, because he sort of initiated all this, started building trust. I sort of what he called piggybacked onto it at the school level, but he did it at the university level, which is why you have success. We had so much of success, and maybe many HBCU. I mean, I know of certain schools which do that. Many HBCUs do that. So this is an opportunity for them to get into it. And as was pointed out, not all of them know that these programs exist, so don't apply for the grants. That's another issue. So we need to have a wider dissemination among HBCUs that these grants do exist, and EDA has given grants to HBCUs, and we should look for it proactively.
Great. Yeah, really helpful, and you know that foundation of kind of knowing what your assets are first, and then you know leveraging those partnerships and relationships. So really helpful. I do have a question, Joanne, for you. There were some folks that wrote in. They were taking a look at the slide about business centers and noticed that some of their states weren't represented. So just wanted to know your thoughts about that for folks that are in states that don't have a business center, what their options are and opportunities that they can still kind of take advantage of the MBDA resources.
Absolutely. Happy to talk about that. Where we don't have a presence, we have the initiatives that were on the right-hand side of the slide that had the investments at the bottom there, where we have the formerly incarcerated, the women, enterprising women of color. Those are initiatives that we put out all the time. We also have, notably, an unsolicited proposal platform. So if you have a concept, like we've heard some really awesome stuff today on what you'd like to see, what you envision, what you'd like to see more of, we have an unsolicited proposal platform. If you're interested in submitting an unsolicited proposal for consideration for funding, you have that option as well. Now, we also have this grant competition that's going to be announced within, I'm anticipating the next few months. I don't know the exact date because we're under a continuing resolution now. And as you know, in doing your federal grants, when we're under a CR, it's commonly known, we don't know when we can put out grant competition announcements. However, what I do know is that we do have those 26 that you saw on the left that are going to be coming up for bid. And we would absolutely love to have more HBCUs competing for those grants to help minority business owners that both of you referenced in your presentation today to establish a presence on your campus. We would love, I can't promise you that will happen, but I would love, but you can't win if you don't play. So we'd love to have you play and be a part of the competition. Thank you, Brett.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Joanne.
Joanne, I already sent our proposal, Joanne. It's in your inbox.
Okay. Thank you.
Make it happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
yeah,
you.
just a few more quick questions here. And again, thanks for everyone for sticking around a little bit longer. But Michael, there's a question about the EDLI chapter that you're expanding, and there's a question here about are you thinking about looking at other universities as well to expand that reach? And just quickly, could you just remind folks exactly what EDLI is and just kind of what the vision is for maybe spreading that to other colleges?
Absolutely. So EDLI stands for the Economic Development and Leadership Institute. And again, this was an opportunity for us to share with our students the actual economic development profession. Again, many of them had no clue. So it's very interesting. In the College of Business, in most business schools, you hear the term, what are the three most important things for a successful business? And I know this changes a bit, but the three most important things we say are location, location, location. And so what we say now, and for economic development professionals to get them to understand, is that the economic development professional creates the location, location, location. So if you're there prior to, you don't experience the rents, the higher rents and all that. So it's best to be at the ground floor where you can design the community and the ecosystem that and you believe to be best for your respective community. So with that, we partner with IDC. Most are familiar with IDC, and IDC, again, a critical partner in this movement. So they provide the training around economic development. We've actually had one student who completed the entire suite of courses that are necessary to sit for the certified exam.
Great.
And so with that, again, our students take that opportunity to get that training, and then they get the experiential training that happens at within the university center itself. And then they move forward again to kind of this movement towards economic development professionals. Specifically to the point, again, we have Lincoln University that we're currently in negotiations with, and we're looking for opportunities to expand this to other HBCUs or other institutions of higher learning as well. Because again, we believe that this is an area that is untapped and unrealized, specifically as it pertains to some of the talents that come out from our youth, and being able to really kind of change the philosophy and the thoughts and the ideas around economic development the output or the outcomes of that could just be incredible.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I hope folks take advantage of that and start those conversations and at least see it as a model, certainly, for what's possible.
Right. So feel free to reach out to me. I know I didn't leave my email address, but it's mcasson@desu.edu, and we'll be happy to kind of talk to you about bringing EDLI to your respective university.
Perfect. Great. We've got one more question for Siddhartha here, and it's just asking about was it challenging to make the case about design and architecture as a driver for economic development, or do you think did the community, did funders, was stakeholders kind of involved on kind of what that kind of connection is, even though it may not be kind of traditionally seen as an economic development approach?
Yes, it was. And again, I got to clarify one thing. All the other projects were traditional planning projects. There was only one architectural and design project we did, and it was difficult to convince the community that design could actually drive economic development. So one of the initial discussion that we had is like I used examples of how things can be done with design in order to improve the look of the place, and how in that and in turn that might attract people for economic growth and things of that sort. I mean, one of the things that we did is another thing we did is we showed examples of what has been done. Like, if what you call Baltimore has these old breweries. So how they have been repurposed. I mean, they were not doing anything. They were defunct, but they have been repurposed into places where you mix entertainment with brewing and things of that sort. So we sort of said that that's part of the design process. It's not all economics, because it's also how it looks. But yes, it was difficult. But they eventually were convinced that that something that is driven by design could actually drive economic. We were able to show what I had to do is to show the connection, basically.
Great.
But it was,
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
If I could add to that, I just wanted to add that, in the College of Business, we say that real estate is the currency for economic development, and real estate and hence the design is the currency for economic development, one of the currencies.
Absolutely. Great. So Doug, no specific question for you, but I just want to give you a chance to kind of give the last word from EDA, and just kind of any kind of final thoughts from your perspective.
Sure, thanks, Brett. Really just want to say thank you to everybody who participated in today's webinar, our distinguished presenters, and everybody in the audience. One of the main objectives for EDA to hold these webinars was to really help support the relationship building process across organizations in the Philadelphia region, HBCUs and EDDs. You are two important types of institutions that have something important to offer to each other when it comes to regional economic development. And EDA is your steadfast partner in supporting those relationships and helping to provide you with the resources you need to bring your visions for economic growth, economic development to life. I know that I speak for Joanne when I say that MBDA is there as well. So at any point when you feel that EDA can be of assistance to you, to your organizations, your communities, please reach out and contact us at any time. Please refer to this list of links, web-based information that's available. We're here to help in any way that we can. So thank you.
Yeah. Excellent, Doug. Well, I certainly echo that, and it's been a real honor to host today's session as well as the two previous ones we've done. This has been a tremendous kind of opportunity to have these conversations and discussions, and I hope it's the first of many more. So again, thanks to all of our panelists, all of you who stuck on a little bit longer than we were expecting, but that's a good thing. I think there's been so much really valuable information shared as well. The slides and recording, of course, will be made available at eda.gov shortly. So if you want to share those with colleagues that you might think would enjoy. So with that, hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Take care of yourselves, keep up the good work, and we'll see you next time. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for hosting
Thank
this.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.